All right, I'm going to get started, and then guys, just jump in along the way if you've got anything to add. If you've got any questions, or doesn't matter how silly you might think they are or good you might think they are, just jump in and ask some questions. There's a bit of experience on this call behind me as well, so they can welcome to have a say as well. So welcome to our third webinar. We've been doing them monthly, the last Thursday of every month. I think our last one for the year will be in November. Obviously not going to be doing one at the end of December. And the third one, which we're doing today, is on two-wire irrigation controllers. So just going to keep it as simple as possible, whilst also hopefully educating a bit. And it'll be a bit of an introduction. We've done an introduction to hydro-wires. We'll be doing an introduction to two-wire today. And then, as time goes on, we'll do more in-depth looks at these things to, try and educate as much as we can. So I'm online today. I'll be running it. My name's Simon from Sunshower Online. Thanks for coming. And I've also got Adrian Walsh here from EcoStream Water Management. He's probably been installing for 20 plus years, project managing large-ish, and from large to small projects, mostly in the commercial space. So I've invited him along today to give us a heads up on what he finds helpful, and what he does, and things to look out for with two-wire systems. So I'll get into it, and like I said, feel free to jump in as we go.
Cool.
Rightio. So today's webinar, we're going to be looking at what a decoder system is, what the advantages are of using a decoder system, when to use one, and also hear from an experienced contractor in Adrian. So now I'm assuming you guys know what a traditionally wired controller is. If you don't, that's okay, but this is it here. So you've got a lot of different strands of wire. One color goes to each valve, and then you've got a common which connects to all your valves. Okay, so you got a lot of cables running around your field. If you've got 30 valves, then you need 31 wires, which is three or four looms of cable. Okay, and this is a decoder system. So rather than having lots of different strands of wire, you've simply got two wires that come out of your controller, and then they connect to each valve. So you've got an item called a decoder at each valve, and they're kind of like a messenger, if you like. So the controller's got two wires. The message travels along the two-wire path, gives the decoder a message, and the decoder passes the message onto the valve to start or stop. So that's the basics of it. There's a lot of different brands. This was one of the better diagrams I could find, Mark. So I don't know if Hunter's got something that or could look at having something. It's not a bad diagram. And that's a bit of a typical layout. Okay. Does that make sense to those of you here today?
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. Rightio. So, and again, this is a bit of a typical layout. Again, you've got a two-wire path. Controllers can have up to 4, generally two-wire paths, depending on the model. But you can see here that you've got your cable path, and each one of these dots is a valve. You can make a split and go each way from there. So you've just got two-wire paths running around the site, and you can put your messengers or your decoders in line there, and you make a bit of a tree, a bit of like a root system, isn't it? But you can branch off anywhere, you can add anywhere. That's cool.
Yep, that's cool. Awesome. Yep.
Now the key advantages are, or why you would do it, is number one, you got less cable. So I spoke before about having 13 core cable. If you've got 30 valves, that's at least 31 cables, and you probably want a couple of spares in case anything changes. So that's 3 big fat looms of cable. And if you're running long distances, it's big fat thick looms of cable, which get pretty expensive. So with a 2-wire system, you got 2 wires. So you got much less cable, and that cable path is simplified. The second reason is you got longer cable runs. So you can run up to, and you might have seen on that last one, the IVM was about 2.6 kilometers. You can go up to 6 kilometers depending on how you map your cable path. And this is another great advantage. You know, they've been used on golf courses for decades, commercial sites for a long time. They're getting more and more popular, but you can start to see why, why they're an advantage. And higher station count. So traditionally, wired controller is a 54 station or thereabouts, which are the Hunter models. But with a decoder controller, you can go all the way up to and beyond 200 stations. So the largest commercial, standard irrigation controller, if you like, is about 240 stations, and the systems go even larger. But they cover a lot of area. And much easier installation. So you just got your 2-wire path again. You do have to have a bit of a thought process with where you run your cable, and mapping your cable is a really important thing to do. However, you don't need to know exactly where every valve is going to be going. You don't need to know where changes might occur down the track. If you just want to put some pipe in the ground and some cable, you can just do that, and then you can cut into it when you're ready. And yeah, that's that flexibility. So if you've got a 30-station controller and you want to install a veggie patch, you can just cut into the 2-wire path. If you've got conventional cable, what you're doing is you're hoping that you've got a spare wire, or using something like a splitter, or you're running more cable from the controller. So that upfront cost of the decoder controller can pay itself off quite quickly in that situation. And I was speaking to a contractor yesterday who'd put a decoder controller on a large domestic site. They've bought the block next door in Turak, as you do, and they're going to bulldoze a house and build a garden. So they can just add zones on. The infrastructure's there, the pipe's there, the 2-wire. 2-wire cable is there, so they just keep adding. You can have up to 240 stations off the one cable path if you wish. It's not recommended because it's a bit of a nightmare for troubleshooting, but you can do that. Okay, and you can even add water sources. So if you add a water source from that other side of the street in Turak, you can just cut in and add a master valve and flow sensor. Okay, and that's just a bit of a look. That's one of the newer decoder controllers on the market. The easy decoder system. They can have 2-wire paths out of them, and so that it's just a bit of an image of the 2-wire path. When to use them? So when the station count is close to or over 30 stations is kind of a tipping point. Unsure of the exact design, would like to run multiple stations at once. So there's some pretty powerful conventionally wired controllers out there, like the ACC2, where you can run up to, I think it's 15 stations at once. I'm happy to stand corrected, but I think that's correct. But with a decoder controller, again, depending on the model, you can run up to 16 stations at once as well. And you've got multiple water sources, so really easy to tap in a new master valve and flow sensor, and away you go again. Any comments or questions there from anyone?
Yeah, I've got one, Simon. You mentioned there the station count close to or over 30 is roughly when to use. I've heard similar.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, Adrian Walsh, from a installer contractor point of view, from a cost benefit, would that be about right? Or I have heard around 20 to 24.
Yeah, 20 to 30 it really depends on, I think, how far the mainline run's going to be. So we recently, a little while ago, we did a job where the customer wanted its tiny little microclimates on a pretty small site. So we actually had 45 stations on it was a bit less, about 42 stations on like a block that was only about half an acre. Like, it was a really small site with a really big house on it. So we're not talking a huge amount of garden. Now, generally, if I was using that as a, if I just had a rule where every time was over 30 stations, well, the main line was only about 150 meters long. And in that situation, I didn't find that a decoder system was worthwhile, because the zones are really small and the valves are really close to each other. And even on a run that's where your cable's only 150 meters, although we didn't use 0.5 cable, you're still probably at that smaller cable size.
Yeah.
So it does go job by job, but as a general rule, I tend to go, well, when we're designing it at these slightly larger valves, so let's say the valves are not only doing like 15 litres a minute, let's say they're doing 45 to 60 litres a minute and so they're spreading a larger area, and our mainline run is now 250 metres long and we have 24 to 25 stations. Yeah, we're starting to get to a point where we go for a decoder, I think.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Cool. Thanks, Adrian. And Adrian.
You can go with Sav for me if you like, guys. Differentiate.
And future expansions, like, it just makes it so easy. And, even if you do have a smaller system, and it saves you the hassles of running the cable or doubling up on a valve or whatever you need to do, it pays for itself pretty quickly. Yeah, I had another big site, and there's plenty of them, particularly down the peninsula, the large private residences where 2-wire systems are fantastic. And they just wanted to they were just running pipe from the dam to the front gate, had no idea what they were doing with the landscape. So when they did that, they just put a 2-wire path, two wires in the trench. And now, as they need to add in, they just cut in and put a valve there. That's all they need to do. And they can cut in and put a water meter there, or, they can put a veggie garden, wherever they want, or whatever it is. So heaps of flexibility. Okay. So the basic components. Now, I've got a couple of hunters here. That's the ICD, and there's a Rainbird on the screen as well. So that's your decoder. So these are just the basic components. Your 2-wire path. Now, that varies with manufacturer. The recommendation is always to use the cable recommended by the manufacturer. Don't buy, I don't know if Adrian and Mark, you think differently, but don't buy Hunter cable and Rainbird decoders, or the opposite, or Toro decoder. Just stick to the same manufacturer, because then when you need help troubleshooting or you're trying to work things out down the track, it's much easier, and all the support's from the same place. You might even find that some manufacturers say, if you don't use the right cable, then, don't bother calling us. Yeah. And then your gel caps. So your DBRYs are the standard recommendation. I know the Easy Decoder, you don't have to use them, but yeah, there's certainly a 100% have to with the Rainbird and Toro decoder controllers, and they've got those little wire nuts there. So you twist your joint in there and push it deep into the gel, and they're waterproof. Now, they're not meant to be submerged forever, as things are. I don't know where the rest of you blokes are from, but as things are in Melbourne at the moment, but they are waterproof. Okay. What is the recommendation, actually, Adrian and Mark? I know I see that you don't have to use the DBRYs, but do you still recommend them? The guys that I deal with that use the Easy Decoders still do use them.
Yep.
It's a good habit. It's a good habit to maintain, even though the EZs work slightly differently. But it's a good habit to go all decoder systems, go the DBR wise. And also, I mean, and Adrian, Walsh will probably elaborate on this, is allowing for spare cable in valve boxes. There's nothing worse than getting called out and you've got 3 inches of slack when you should have about 3 meters.
You want to be able to pull it out of the valve box, right, and do your troubleshooting above ground.
Wire only gets shorter. It doesn't get any longer every time someone cuts a joint out.
And actually, I will elaborate on that a little bit, because it's good. Some decoder cable's pretty rigid. So leaving that spare cable is great, but sometimes it's so rigid that you'd have trouble getting the valve box lid on. So the way that we like to do it is bring it in to the box and loop it around like this, and then do the join. Because it's it enables you to have heaps of working space and just have some flexibility there. Because there's nothing worse than doing it all, and then you're trying to slam a lid to try to shut it, and then a consultant opens it, it pops up, and they're not happy with you, or do it differently or whatever.
Good tip.
For some do have that harder outer sheath, which is better for protection, but yes, it's harder. It's more rigid. I get it.
Rightio.
And also, I guess, Simon, too, you said use the same manufacturer as the decoder. I know the Hunter 2-wire path is red and blue, and it matches to make it easier to wire a decoder to red and blue. You don't get there and it's red and black and so forth. I mean, it's a color thing, but if you've not used to it, then stick with the same.
Just keeps it simple.
Correct.
Thanks, Mark. Rightio. And differences in programming, there's not really much at all. It's brand dependent. You know, the Rainbirds have an address on them, which I'll show you in a sec. And you punch that into the controller. And the Hunter ones you program from the controller. So you plug them in and say, I want this to be zone 1. Okay. But once you've done that, it's really the same as a conventional controller. You know, moving forward, you're just putting a start time in there, run time and run days for your, you know, however many programs you've got, 4 or 40 or whatever you've got. So it's the same stuff. It's just that initial programming and away you go. Okay, so there's the little Rainbird decoder address just there. And over here, you'll see an easy decoder controller with the 2 wires into the ports. And you press program after selecting what station you want it to be. So just some basic differences with the manufacturers. But again, once you've done that, it's really easy. Rightio. Okay, now there's a lot of options out there. I'm just going to look at a couple today. Probably the new one that's taken the market by storm. Well, I assume it's worldwide, Mark, but certainly I watched it in Melbourne get more and more market share, particularly in that entry-level space or D&C space where guys just wanted to irrigate, you know, get it done quickly and walk out. It started to bring the product into, you know, probably more landscapers' hands and less experienced players' hands. I think it's still a specialized product, decoder systems, but it has made it easier. And that's an easy decoder system. So that works on the Pro C and the HPC, which is the HydroWise model of the Pro C. Also works on the ICC2 and the HCC. So it's a really neat product. You can use it on a standalone controller or upgrade to HydroWise, and they go, the HPC's 32 stations, I'm pretty sure is the number. And the HCC is 60 stations or 60 odd stations, or 54, is it?
54.
Okay. And it's just that little module there. So you can plug that straight into your controller and away you go. That you can, you've even got the option to have some conventional and some 2-wide, right? What's the station count if you do that, Mark? Can you do half, or is it just the base module? Or?
Yeah, no. As long as you've got an EZ module in there, it maxes at 54. So you can have a hybrid system with a total station count up to 54. So it could be whatever split you want, 20 hardwired, 34 decoders, 20 decoders, 34 hardwired. It doesn't matter.
It's which is really fantastic, particularly in a retrofit situation where you want to pull out a 20 station controller and upgrade to, 30, 40 stations. Fantastic option.
Yeah,
Okay.
just on that, Simon, the beauty of EZ is not only can it work on 2-wire decoder cable, which is specific decoder cable, it can also run on multi-strand existing wire. And that's why a lot of people, the retrofit, it's been really good. They don't have to put new wires in the ground, and that's worth thousands.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. It makes it a bit easier to work with in that too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And that's what's the recommendation, Mark? Is it still the 2.5 mil?
It depends on how far you want to go. If you've got existing 1.5 mil in the ground and you're running one decoder at a time, you'll probably get 500 meters out of it. So on smaller blocks for commercial space, it's perfect. They're blank. All of our decoders are blank, so you name it what you want.
Yeah.
But the hybrid system, as you said, so an existing system, you grab the first 20 wires, which are nice and close, and then you might run a 2-wire path out for the extension next door as a 2-wire system. So you can have that hybrid out of the one controller.
Yeah. That's great. Rightio. And then at the other end of the spectrum in this particular space is probably the newest. I probably came out about the same time, but is the IVM. So that's got some really advanced troubleshooting in it. Really high station count, 240 stations, and an integrated valve that goes straight into your valve. So that's kind of the two ends of the scale, and in between the ACC2 decoder controller and the LXD would sit in there as well. So it's kind of horses for courses, there's not one controller that fits every need. The best is to investigate exactly what you want to do, and then we can choose the best option from there. And there's other brands on the market, but not really in the commercial space. Toro's got some stuff, and but they're more aimed towards golf, and they're the 3 series players in the market. Well, Rainbow and Hunter are really the 2 series players in the market. And plenty of options. So this is a bit of a layout. So this gives you a look at how flexible they are. Again, it depends on the controller, but this one can have up to 4 wire paths. You can connect your sensor straight into the controller, run your 2-wire path around the site, cut in at a valve, move on, cut in at a flow sensor. So a decoder or in this case, the IVM is a messenger. So it sends the signal away from the controller, and then a sensor sends it back. So this one's sending the information back about the flow rate, if it, exactly what's happening out there. And then you can keep going on and put a decoder in line, turn on a valve. Keep traveling along to your pump shed, decoder in line, turn on your pump. So really simple, and you can even add a sensor anywhere in the field as well. Again, just a neat diagram that shows, the basics of the layout. Is that sinking in, guys? Is there any questions out there?
Simon, would you say that pump start?
Yeah.
Do you find people are using them to start water features and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
would they be on a separate program or?
Yeah, you can do it. You can do anything with them, I suppose. Like this particular one's a DC latching relay because it's it's IVM, but you can turn on anything with them. Probably the thing that you want to keep in mind is if you're turning on a water feature or some lights or opening a gate or whatever you're doing, you just want to make sure you're doing it and you're using a controller that's got spare programs, so it's not going to interrupt your irrigation cycles. But have you done that before, Adrian?
I'm trying to think. Not a water feature. I'm pretty sure we've done something else though. Yeah. There was. I can't remember what we did. We've done something weird before. I know we have.
I've on the most part seen it run pumps You know, on places like golf courses and that, they probably get a lot more complex, but yeah, that's probably the most of it. Oh, that was meant to pop up at the end, obviously. However, Adrian Walsh is going to give us a little bit of feedback now. I'm just going to shoot him some questions.
Just hang on 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Okay, so just write some notes. Yeah,
So,
go ahead, Simon.
So first of all, how long have you been installing 2-wire systems for?
Well, installing would be about probably, I don't know, 15 years. I came across them a little bit earlier as like when I was doing some maintenance and stuff, you come across them.
Yeah.
And they start as a sort of scary thing. And then you realize they're probably not so scary after you've been doing them for a while, if you sort of know a few of the tricks. Yeah. And you know what? We've made probably every mistake with them to learn our lessons. Yeah.
There's some pretty important tools, which, I haven't really gone into in this, but, there's some tools that help you troubleshoot, which are really important. It's probably something for more of an advanced session. Why do you choose to install decoder systems is what that says.
Look, you've gone through a bit of it, like around the cost benefit is probably one of the biggest. Yeah. The other one is that opportunity for expansion or customers who change their mind. Like we've got customers who change their mind constantly, and like we do operate in the peninsula. Yeah. And there's money down in the peninsula, and it's not weird for someone to say, irrigate this, pay a whole lot of money for it, and 12 months later go, this is all being demolished and we're reshaping it again. Yeah. And having that flexibility, all water sources, the original water source changed to being now 400 meters away. And so therefore you have to change where the sensor goes, the master valve and everything. And that would almost be a disaster if that was conventionally wired.
Yeah. Yeah. There's even some of these landscape jobs where they chuck the 2-wire path in and they're not even quite sure of what that exact flow rate's going to be yet, and that gives them a lot of flexibility as well.
Yeah. So there's that. The other one that we actually use it on is these projects from a construction point of view. We have a lot of projects that are built in stages. Yeah. And I don't know if pulling conventional wiring through when every 10 meters you got another path to cross. Yeah. And this might go for 250 meters long, and if you got elbows and there's joins, and it can become a bit of a nightmare pulling that cable, especially if it's done in stages. Whereas with the decoder cable, you just have to go from valve to valve. Yeah. And you can't, technically you can do it with conventionally wired cable, but you're doing if you got 13 core, you're stripping 26 wires every time to rejoin, and doing 13 joins. I've seen that happen before. It's much easier with decoder cable. So that is a real concern now. And a lot of these projects are built in stages, and people are getting really funny with the way they do their landscape designs and really intricate. And so that's for us, that's a real thing that we might go to the decoder direction. Yeah.
Cool. And there's a lot of options now as well, isn't there? Like, again, those easier decoders are probably, more affordable and for those simpler sort of systems. And then, you can choose the right model to, number one tip when installing them.
Yeah. So I would say knowing the limits of the brands and knowing the intricacies of each brand. Yeah. So, it's just simple things like with the Hunter cable, like there's this little string thing in it that you can rip down and rip the sheath really easily. Yeah. But you wouldn't do that with the Rainbird one, because the Rainbird one, you do a little cut on it, snap it. Yeah. And both can drive you up the wall if you don't know the little tips with them.
Rainbird one's real rigid, isn't it? But it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be, I think, the number. And the other one is, that's probably the more important tip, is the decoder cable is awesome, but you want to make sure it's sealed pretty clear after installation.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I've seen happen before, and it's happened on one of our projects before, and we learned a lesson from it. In stages, and we'd installed the cable, and the cable sat in the ground for way too long before we fit the decoders off.
Yeah.
And because this project expanded years. So what we do now on projects that are going to expand a long time, we don't install the cable, we put conduit in, we pull the cable later.
Oh yeah. And
then we do the fit off really quickly after installing the cable. This will save a lot of headaches, and the longevity of the system will be so much better. So that potentially could save you some real nightmares.
Yeah, and it's probably, I've always said, like, treat every dead end or bit of cable that you leave in the ground for 2 months, treat everything like a wire join, cover everything and protect it if you have to go that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So I'll do one more. You said one tip, but I'm going to do one more.
No, go for it.
And I noticed, and it's funny little things you pick up, because one of the hunter guys in the States, Kevin, I follow a little bit of stuff that he does, and he even had this thing, because we for years have been just pushing the decoder, doing the cable joins, pushing it into the DBR wires. But what he was saying in this video, and they've seemed to work okay, but what he was saying in this video was, once you push it right to the end, to pull it back a little bit, and that will fill any holes that the wire left.
Yeah, right.
So, and I'd never heard that before. I don't know if you've heard that before, Simon. But we've started doing that as well. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I don't know if you can start a belt down here. Hopefully it's not too noisy.
No, I can't hear it. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, cool. Rightio. And yeah, what brands types have you installed?
So definitely the Hunter and the Rainbird ones. Really liking the Easy Decoder for those retrofit situations. I love the little light on the Easy Decoder as well. They've got like a little light in the decoder when it's running.
Yeah,
that's pretty handy. The Rainbird ones, Toro, Weathermatic, we did a couple, and the Motorola ones, which the Irrigation ones. But Hunter and Rainbird really are the main two. And what I'd say, even in those brands, make sure you're grabbing the right decoder for the type of, because once again, it may not be you, but it might be one of your staff.
Yeah.
They see a Hunter decoder, or like if you're putting in a ACC2, you go install the Hunter decoders, and they go grab Jules or Easy decoders, you'll be in some problems there. So just keep that in mind, because there is different types of decoders within the same brand. Yeah.
Any other questions for Adrian, guys? Cool.
No, all good.
Make it back up to the cloud once you finish doing decoders.
Yeah, and write them down if you don't have that software as well. Yeah. Hey, it's a good tip.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and is there any questions or feedback from anyone?
I just regardless of brand, I think 99% of phone calls I get are all related to poor wire joins.
Yeah. So
get the training before you put it in the ground, and we've done lots of training, and people that ask the question rather than just, pretend to know, generally have no issues. It's poor workmanship trying to save a couple of meters of wire that leads to long-term headaches.
Yeah. And I mean, the suppliers or, you know, someone experienced is generally pretty happy to help you on your first or second pre-installation to go.
Absolutely. They would much rather help you teach you how to install it correctly than troubleshoot it. It's a lot easier to do it properly the first time.
Yeah, good tip. Thanks very much. How to treat the cable, how to treat your wire joins, how to install things properly. You know, just get all that right, and you'll have a good time.
It'll go forever. Correct.
Yeah, if you don't, you'll have a bad time. I remember one of my visited a couple of sites up in Swan Hill once, and one of them was a decoder system. Had been in the ground for 20 years, and it had problems from day one. And there was wire joins and all these different sorts of things that were causing issues. And then another site, not too far away, was the opposite. Been in the ground for 40 years. I was still operating the system with a DOS computer, and it had hardly missed a beat. You know, the wire joins and the decoders were spot on, and the system was spot on. It's so important to a good system. Yeah. Now, so if you enter your email address of the guys that are here, we'll offer a 5% coupon on decoders and decoder components. Now, this page isn't live yet. We've been meaning to launch a new website for the last month or so. So we're pretty close now. And when it is live, we'll be adding a decoder page to increase that range on the website. So when that is live, I'll be shooting you a link. So just type your email address in the notes section, and I'll send that through for you. And thanks very much. Thanks for coming along. Next one is going to be, is that how you spell it, Adrian? On the Armada wire trackers or range on November the 24th at 5 p.m. So there'll be emails with details on that. But they're really popular and probably underutilized tools. So Adrian, who's actually Adrian Saville, who's logged in today, will be helping us out with that session. So thanks for coming along. There is a recording of this one, so I'll share that with you in the next few days as well. Thanks heaps for coming, guys, and hope you got something out of it.